Hello, this is Catherine from Accelerated Reader, reading books for you. Today I will be reading Chapter 60 from Two Worlds, a novel of friends and foes from strange places, by Laura T. Lee. Before I begin reading, I would like to give a big thanks to the author for sending me this book to read on my channel. In the description below, I've included links where you may find and purchase this book. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Chapter 60. Sophie raised her sword and armed dwarfs appeared in a flash of blinding gray light, charging upon the surprised elves with cries of battle. In a few moments, the park was a maelstrom of fighting elves and dwarfs. Tara leaped forward and began sparring with Sophie, their weapons moving so fast they were impossible to follow. The two dodged and parried with the battle raging around them. Lily noticed that the dwarves and elves alike kept a wide distance from the swinging blades. Lily ran through her list of sword tricks and used them on her enemies, wading through the crowd and slowly making progress toward Sophie. Jake, who had gotten a dagger, crept up behind Sophie, but the sorceress was on high alert. Tripping Tara, she whipped around and knocked Jake's blade out of his hands, kicking him backward. Jake fell and Sophie swung her weapon at him. No! Parker appeared out of the crowd, knocking his brother aside as the sorceress' sword grazed Jake's arm. They tumbled into the raging battle and disappeared. Tara had gotten up and was busy whacking a group of heavily tattooed dwarves. Lily lunged at Sophie with her sword drawn. It was a good thing Lily was fast. She barely managed to block Sophie's first attack. They traded attacks back and forth, faster and faster. Lily's mind whirled as she tried to remember how she had trained earlier. She ducked and Sophie tripped her. She landed hard on the ground, her blade slipping from her fingers. Sophie stomped on the dirt, and a magical charge flowed through the crowd, surrounding every dwarf. Sophie's minions seemed to stand up straighter, but because they were, dwarves, they didn't get much height improvement, and they started attacking with renewed energy. Lily got to her feet unsteadily. From the moment she had fallen, the massive crowd had surrounded her in their fight, obscuring all vision and forming a wall between her and Sophie. Nearby, she saw a young girl dashing through the chaos, dodging weapons and carrying several first aid boxes. Lily ran to meet her. "Juanita, what are you doing here?" Juanita whipped around, nearly dropping a box in surprise. "There were no other nurses who would come," she said. "I volunteered." But Lily heard the unmistakable sound of several bowstrings being drawn taut. "Duck!" She tackled Juanita as a line of dwarves simultaneously fired a wave of arrows at them. Several pierced the ground inches from Lily. The rest sailed into the air harmlessly. As the dwarves reloaded, several dozen elves fell upon them. Lily got to her feet, snatching up the first aid boxes from the ground and placing them in Juanita's arms. "Don't drop them," she said sternly. Juanita nodded and sprinted behind a tree, where elves immediately ran toward her, carrying the wounded. Lily sidestepped them all and ran back into the battle. And so it went. Lily fell into a sort of trance, striking with her sword and trying to make her way to Sophie, who stood in the middle of it all. She managed to get within 5 feet from the sorceress, but before she could strike, Sophie disappeared. What? Lily turned in a circle and saw Sophie close by, still fighting. She tried to approach the sorceress again, but Sophie vanished and appeared somewhere else. Lily realized that she was teleporting herself away from Lily every time she sensed her coming. She decided not to attack. Instead, Lily focused on the bigger and less dangerous targets, the dwarves. By now the afternoon sun was high in the sky, but Lily could tell Sophie sent out a danger vibe to keep people in their houses. Lily set to work, knocking the weapons out of the enemies and kicking them over. Just as she was about to sneak up on another dozen dwarves, she tripped over someone lying on the ground. She looked down. Jake! Jake lay sprawled by her feet, with a long cut on his arm from when Sophie had cut him. Lily grabbed him by the arms and dragged him over to Oneida, trying her best to dodge flying weapons. Depositing him next to his sister, she turned and found herself face to face with Stacy. Lily jumped. Geez, Stacy, you didn't have to scare me like that. I found something. Stacy's eyes gleamed. You'd better check it out. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for Chapter 61. Don't forget to like and subscribe. In the description below, I've included links where you may find and purchase this book.